I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Iris Factory Automation webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about our variety case pack and palletizer. My name is Brittany Carroll. I'm the channel partner manager, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our president, Rob Fell, who's going to present this webinar today.
Thanks, Britt. Thanks to everyone who's out there listening. We're pretty excited to share this content with you. This was a system that was a long time in the making. Really took a ton of time and effort on behalf of our team, and really culminated in the creation of something that the market hasn't seen, certainly not in terms of this level of flexibility. So what we're really talking about today is a system that can execute variety packs for a number of different form factors with limited changeover and at a reasonable rate. In this particular application, we were turning out an upwards of 12 to 14 cases a minute. And what the system was intended to do basically is our client was doing this, and I'll touch on this a little bit, but was doing this process manually where they would bring in WIP product, they would break that product down, they would reassemble it into variety packs, repackage it, repalletize it, and so forth. So, clients do that a couple different ways today. They do that either on site at their facility, or they do it at a 3PL, which really incurs even more cost because there's typically waste in terms of the packaging, depending on how they package it the first time, obviously the logistics side of it, and then the loss of control and the fact that the product leaves their facility. So, those were some of the motivations, in addition to some other things that I'll talk about here, as to why our client wanted to create a system that they could actually keep this in-house. And if anyone has any questions, please, you can post them in the chat. This presentation will not take an hour. I know we have an hour slated here. I'd love to get through the presentation and the content and then answer any questions, because there's a lot here I'm sure that we could chat about after the fact. So I'm going to play a short video. Originally I was going to kind of talk over this, but we'll speak to the individual portions of this, but I am going to play a short video for you guys here. So check your volume. So as far as what you saw there, and we'll get into the composition of the equipment, but at the end of the day, it was a pretty monster system. It's funny, we've always joked, most of our automation, I would say, is we'd consider to be point of use automation. So, we're line side, we're focusing on this very specific task or tasks. And I used to joke that we'd never build a line that was a multi-million-dollar line that was 100 feet long. And today, what we're presenting literally is a multi-million-dollar line that was 100 some feet long. So it is pretty massive. It has 4 Kawasaki industrial robots that are doing the depalletizing and repalletizing, and I believe there's actually 10 20-kilogram SKUs robots, substance SKUs robots, that reside in the middle of this, in and amongst some vision equipment and some pretty advanced end farm tooling and things. So it is a really big and really cool system. So I'll kind of get into a little bit of kind of how we got here, or actually rather, I'm sorry, I'll get a little bit of kind of about us for those of you guys who don't know. IRIS was started in our 11th year here. Some of the things that I'm really proud of, everything's American made. So the only thing that we don't do literally in our 4 walls is metal fabrication. So everything that comes out of our shop, all the design, electrical programming, testing, support, installation, everything is actually done by IRIS employees. And then we have a few different partners that do the metal fabrication. So the nice thing about that for our clients is if they ever want changes or modifications of our standard systems, or when we talk about custom systems, we're really easy to work with in that capacity because we really own all the propriety of all of our equipment. We're located outside of Chicago in Aurora, Illinois, which is about 45 minutes west of Chicago. We have deployments actually in North and South America and in parts of Europe as well. And really our area of specialty is end-of-line packaging automation and inspection. If you look at the composition of our business, we're probably about, 30%, I would say, standard products, things of a palletizing variety, 30-ish percent inspection and barcode scanning and automated vision inspection. And then the balance of that is usually custom automation, which is a combination of machine vision and robotics. So even when we do custom automation, it's within the competencies of what we're good at, which is vision, robotics, and data collection. In terms of this particular application, it's always, for me, it's kind of always interesting to see how we got here, right? There's always a little bit of a backstory. For us, because this was a first of a kind, it really took a little bit of a foundational situation with our client that we were a trusted entity for them already. We had provided them quite a bit of automation equipment. They knew us, they knew our process, they knew our ability to innovate and execute. So there was this foundation and established relationship that we had that was really critical to this application. And again, they knew our equipment, and this system, this MixPack variety system, really the composition of it is some standard products that we have and then some very custom things in the middle. So we had proven competency with these folks. There were market conditions that were specifically affecting them as far as and geographic. Their local labor pool is relatively small. There's obvious challenges in the marketplace in general right now. Just getting people. It started with COVID. In my opinion, it really hasn't stopped at all. We see it as well, and our customers certainly are faced with it. And then again, their motivation specifically is they were trying to mitigate a very consistent labor shortage. They would bring in temp labor really to outfit their plant in general. And then by the time they kind of parsed out the individual workers to the plant to fill the gaps that they already had that day, they just flat didn't have the people to do this other work, which was more seasonal work and it changed on a pretty regular basis, which is why they backfilled this with temp labor to begin with. The work itself was highly repetitive. And with that, they were lifting relatively large cases, and there was a high risk and high probability of workplace injury. And then also because it was manual in nature, there was sort of a limited quality inspection or control aspect to the application where they were really relying on the individuals to make sure they were doing this work correctly. And the challenge with that is anytime you're doing something that's very repetitive, it's hard to also be tuned into, are you doing it exactly right? When you're taking multiple varieties of different products and packing them together, it's very difficult to also say, am I doing this correctly? So these were some of the challenges and some of the background to how we got to where we're going. So as far as the system composition, this is a pretty critical slide. So on the front end of the system, the general operational structure of this is that we were taking in WIP products, so it was all work in progress product. We were depalletizing that. We were then sending that to what we call central mixing, where we were decasing it and singulating it, and then we rebuild the variety pack, and then we recase pack it, and then we repalletize it. So as I kind of go through the system here, if you want to focus on, let's say, the southeast portion of the screen moving northwest. So first of all, we have an AI-based robot guidance system. So this was really critical. This was a newer company, newer tech, where every time we index a pallet in, and at every point that we pick, we actually rescan the pallet, because anyone who knows WIP, it's relatively inconsistent, right? A lot of times it's hand packed to begin with, and the specific case placement or the pallet may skew depending on how it's handled before then. So the nice thing about this particular piece of equipment is every single time we go to pick, we would scan the product and teach the robot dynamically where to go get it. So if that, we literally did testing where if we just took a base layer and just set 2 cases in the middle, a SKU, the robot would go and find those. So it was extremely flexible, which made it really easy on our customer in terms of monitoring the input of the pallets coming in. And then we'll get to the end of arm tooling. The end of arm tooling on the depalletizing and palletizing, for that matter, was really critical. We needed to come up with something that was able to pick up, standard RCs, open trays, display cases. So, and we had to do it all with the same end of arm tool. So that was a huge challenge with this project. Is our client, kind of challenged us to say, we don't want to do a bunch of tool changeover. We want to hit buttons, and we want the product to change over. We want the system to change over automatically. So we accomplished that in most areas, and specifically in the depal and the repal. There is a system indication screen. So as we're introducing products, whole pallets of whole flavors into the system, and in this particular version, we can take up to 4 different flavors and create these variety packs. There are screens that sit above the palletizers that we dynamically adjust to tell the forklift drivers, drop off this product in this specific location. Okay. As that gets depalletized, and in sort of the order of operations for the depalletized, it's not just based on availability, it's based on required consumption. So further upstream, we know what we need to pack out, and we know the required capacity to each of the mixing areas. So we actually call from the depalletizer to send 2 cases of flavor A, and then 1 case of flavor B, and then 3 cases of flavor C. So it's not just as available. We're very specifically calling for those so we don't cause a traffic jam in the central mixing area. So once we depalletize, we do a vision scan just to make sure that the product is coming that we believe is coming, so we haven't lost track of anything. And I'll show you some videos on this as well. But after that, we send the solid flavors into one of 4 individual decasing areas. So each of those represent a flavor. In the case where you may have a 2 flavor, we can get increased rate out of it by feeding in 2 flavors into a total of 4 conveyor sections. So we feed in the solid flavors, A, B, C, and D. We actually decase those, and then we put them on a singulation conveyor. So we take them out of like a 3-up type situation. We put them on a singulation conveyor. And what the singulation conveyor does, and you'll see in the videos, is now we can actually pick the exact amount that we want as we rebuild the variety pack. What's important to know as well is the system is relatively closed loop. So after we prime the system with product, it runs without needing to keep adding raw materials. So the pallets, for example, once they move their way into depalletizing, they move to a T-car that actually takes the empty pallets, sends them down to the other side of the system, and then reintroduces them into the palletizing area. In the case of the cases in the trays and display cases, once we actually decase the product, we recirculate those trays back in to the recasing area and use that very same tray to recase the product. So it's nice because there's almost no waste in the system, and it takes very little input in terms of raw materials. The engagement with the system is really just fork truck drivers that are coming in, putting product on and taking product off. So for our client, our goal was to take the system from a 17-person operation down to a 2 or 3-person operation max, and that's really 2 of those are fork truck drivers and maybe 1 operator kind of tending to the cell in general. So and it looks, this system is actually installing as we speak. Everything is pointing towards the fact that will be the case. So once we go through the central mixing area, we recase the product, and then we re-inspect it with vision equipment on the back end, and then we repalletize the product as well. It's odd to give a webinar. Usually doing presentations like this, I love to pause and ask questions, but please, if anyone has questions along the way, even if you want to just get them into the chat box and we can talk about them, please do that so we don't get anything lost here. So as far as form factors go, this particular application, it had cartons of a multitude of varieties, and then it also has the main other say variety of form factor is tall cans of food products. So it wasn't like we were only picking boxes or only picking cartons. We were picking a number of different things. Ultimately, though, the system, based on end of arm tool changes, could pick up, you know, cartons, cups, bottles, pouches. It's the foundation is there to be able to handle a multitude of different product form factors. So I'm going to get into a couple of the things that I spoke to in terms of the composition of the system, and go ahead and just play a couple of videos for you guys so you can see this. Let me turn the volume down just a tad here. So this is the depalletizing area here. In depalletizing, you can see what we're doing. There's sort of a flash to the top of the product. We're scanning that, like I mentioned before. That end of arm tool is really critical, and we'll speak to that a little bit later. But basically what it is, it comes in, picks up the product. There's essentially a spatula that comes in from underneath. We squeeze the product. Sorry, we had to blur this out because of some customer product in there. And I want to note too, by the way, just a little disclaimer, all these videos are from our facility. So I will say that the final version of the system as it sits on the floor is not really represented here. Anyone who's done automation knows when you're in process, there's some cables hanging around that get cleaned up later. So if you see some things along these videos, just to let you know, it is at our shop here. So just to play one more time here, that is one of our standard RPZ Max palletizing, depalletizing platforms. Again, the scan and then the spatula coming from underneath. We can pick one or two products at the same time, and then we put them onto a platform in the back. The first product immediately escapes down the conveyor. The second product gets pushed in and indexes down the conveyor as well. The reason we do that instead of just using the end of arm tool is we were very limited on space. We're doing all this work, and as I mentioned, about 100 feet in length, but we only got about 35 feet in depth, which was not a lot to work with. So we had to come up with some kind of clever things to get product loaded and unloaded, dealing with those space constraints. As far as the vision verification, we do use AI-based vision from Keyence in this particular case. We are scanning the product on the top. It is label-based. It's not barcode-based, and the reason is because there's not always a barcode that's available to us. So we are actually using the label as the checkpoint, so to speak, to make sure that we have the right product coming through. And then as far as, I'm going to back up just a bit here. So when I talked about central mixing, you did see it here where once we bring product in, and we're showing a couple different form factors here. Once we bring that product in, we're pulling it out of the cases or out of the open top trays or out of the display cases. And then that's where we actually singulate the product. I did mention the vision verification. We are using different aspects of the product to be able to identify whether it's a label on the front or a label on the top. And then we're using an AI library to verify that that is correct. We do that on the back end as well, but now we're actually verifying not that it's a solid flavor coming in, but that it's the proper mixed flavor that's actually headed out. So as far as product mixing goes, what you're seeing here is we've already decased and singulated the product, and now these SKUs robots are going to work where they're acquiring exactly the amount of products that we need to start to build out the variety pack. So what happens is we index forward and we're building the layers as we go. Okay, so as we build out these layers, we index all the way down to the recasing area. And the recasing area is grabbing the products. This is a sort of a unique end of arm tool we came up with for the canned products, but grabbing the products. This is an adjustable case packing tooling set where we're pushing these down in the box, which was challenging, by the way. For the trays, it's fine because we can get the tray all the way up to the bottom of the tooling. In the case of the display case, if you think about it, it's kind of too high. So we had to come up with tooling where we were able to both open up that case to be able to get inside and make sure the pack out was consistent, but also deal with the fact that we didn't want to get too deep into it and cause any issues in terms of challenges with the case itself as far as tearing the seams or anything. And this is kind of a little view of kind of getting inside, spreading the case open a bit, and then packing those out. And as far as the palletizing goes, we essentially recycled the tooling that we had on depalletizing. And I know the video is probably a little herky-jerky. I apologize for that, just doing it over the web like this. But same strategy on the way in as on the way out. So we index products in. In this case, we are showing a whole, solid flavor, which is the case sometimes. They just do solid flavors and mix those in and amongst the pallet. But obviously, these would also be mixed cases as well that would be making their way onto the pallet. So with a system this large, having the operability be obvious and easy was quite a challenge. So, as an organization, we focus a lot on user interface and user experience. We really want anybody to be able to walk up to the screen and understand exactly what's going on. So, the screens that we have are atypical. They're not your standard, 8-inch panel view screen where we're using, 21-inch touchscreens and with all custom built graphics and widgets to make it as easy as possible for our clients to be able to kind of sort through being able to troubleshoot, start and stop the system. So, big buttons, very obvious indication as to whatever's going on in the system, whole system graphics, noting, what may be wrong, the ability to adjust, start, stop, clear out in the case of an issue that may come up. And then obviously monitor any kind of like safety zones or anything that may be tripped to help them to get to resolve those in a hurry. So a couple of the keys to the application, other than about 10,000 hours of engineering and just lots of focus on our team and diligence, were the end of arm tooling was pretty huge. So the end of arm tooling was a challenge. I think by the time we deployed the system, we were probably on rev at least 10 of the end of arm tool. We wanted to keep modifying it to make sure that it was robust and it was reliable, because the end of arm tool was tasked with picking up slip sheets. It was tasked with picking up display cases. It was tasked with picking up standard RCs. So it had this like really intense requirement on it. So it took quite a bit to develop that. So that depal and repal tool was a real critical innovation in all this. And then also the canned product, the canned food tool that we have was important as well. So, if you've ever seen any kind of a corrugate, canned food container, when they have the tops, especially if they're a press-on top and they're shrink wrapped, you can't use vacuum, because as you pull on those, especially if you do it with any speed, it actually detaches the top. So we had to really take quite a bit of thought and strategic thinking about how we wanted to acquire that without damaging it. So what we ended up doing is this kind of multi-zone, metal finger rubber tip tool that we're able to grab exactly what we needed and exactly the way we needed without actually damaging the product at all, or dropping the product for that matter. The tool is rock solid. And then the other piece is the 3D vision aspect. So we work with MechMind on this particular one. There's solutions from Cognex and other people, but in this case, we worked with MechMind, and they built and worked with us on building all the AI models for the system, so we could again go back and automatically identify everything that we needed to and make all the adjustments to the robot on the fly. If we did a very static, it's easy to do depal when everything's perfect. So everything was not going to be perfect. So if we had a static situation, great, maybe we didn't need to use that. But in this particular case, there was such a variety of products and such a variety of configurations, we just had to have that. And then as far as just general composition, for those of you guys who don't know us or the products that we have otherwise, small form factor case packing, and collaborative palletizing, both 10 kilogram, 20 kilogram, 25 kilogram, barcode scanning and traceability. We have some really cool line side, very tightly form factored, 8-inch or so wide barcode scanners for cups and cartons and things like that. And then also some inline platforms for vision inspection for really anything: pouches, cans, cartons, cases. It's built to receive a number of different form factors here. So us organizationally, you can kind of see if this is our background. That's how we got to where we were at in terms of the variety pack system. So I did promise you this wouldn't be an hour, and I was for once accurate on timing. If you ask anyone who knows me, I'm always late, so the fact that I'm 30 minutes early is a good thing. So I am open to answer any questions that you guys have, and love to get some feedback. So, Britt, I don't know if you want to kind of open it up to everybody, or if you even have to do that. But if anyone has questions now, let's do it.
Yeah, the chat's open, so feel free to drop your question in there.
All right, guys, any questions at all? I hate to lock it up here without answering any of your questions. Anything about form factor, timelines? Just to give you an idea, this start to finish was about 18 months. I think if we did this again, probably be closer to 12. There was a lot of work that had to be done in terms of first of a kinds. So in terms of expectation in a vacuum, this is probably a 12-month project. In terms of its scalability, we could add depalletizing and repalletizing to either end, obviously more flavors in the middle. And then we are probably up against that 12 to 14 case a minute rate with one recasing system. So we would probably add in another recasing system if you wanted to increase the volume from there.
No questions, but I just had one comment that said great job so far.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, well, if that's the case, guys, I'm going to let you go enjoy a little bit more of your Friday, 33 minutes early. I appreciate everyone being here. I think we're going to go ahead and share this presentation. So if anyone wants to distribute this to people who are not able to make it today, that'd be fantastic. I personally would welcome any one-on-ones. So, Britt, let's make sure my contact information goes out. Carl Koenigsberger, our director of sales, of course, will field any questions. But if there's just, even if it's not a specific application, but you have general questions and you've got, this kind of got your mind going. You know, we had one client, for example, one of our existing clients came in and said, I don't really need the variety pack part of that, but man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just manually feed a system and you guys could do, you know, highly flexible case packing the way that you're doing this. So any one of the parts of the system could be broken out and used individually. So depal, central mixing, and then repalletizing, because sometimes there's not a cost justification for something this big, right? Maybe you guys are running seasonally and you can't justify the entire thing. But if you look at the areas of it that, you know, maybe the mixing is something that you want to do, but the high liability work is depalletizing and repalletizing, it doesn't matter, right? This system was created from scratch. For us, if you said I want A and B, or I want A and C, but I don't want B, that doesn't, you know, that's good for us. So keep in mind the system doesn't have to show up in its entirety. We could certainly break it back down into its individual parts. So, so thanks to everybody today. I'll look forward to hearing from you if you have any other questions, and enjoy your Friday.